Welcome all of you. Let's do this session, the 30th session of OLA, which is on Vastu Shastra, as Guruji mentioned. And welcome to all the online friends. Thank you so much for being here. So let us go into the session as such. To start with, can you please identify this heritage site? Is it possible for you to identify this heritage site? Okay. This is the second one. Let's go to the third one. This is the third. Right. So the first one, I'm sure that many of you would have got it. The first one is from the Harappan civilization, which we call the Saraswati Sindhu civilization. And it is Great Bath. The monument is called Great Bath. And what does it mean? It was a large tank, and it is one of the largest water tank from the ancient world. Its dimensions are like 2.5 feet deep. It runs almost 17 meter long, and really a very large water tank, which is one of the earliest that we ever know. Now, this is an example of what kind of planning and organizing cities of Harappa, the cities of Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, had. This actually takes us, this is only one of the samples from what the Sindhu civilization is all about. So if you see, the whole, the city landscape of Harappa civilization, be it the cities of Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, all these are cities, and we have learned so much about them in 6th standard, right? I mean, 6th or 7th in school. And we know that these were some of the most advanced cities of those times. In fact, it is an understatement to say that it is an advanced city of those times. Even, some of our cities in present-day India, in 21st century India, 2020 India, some of them are not as planned as them. I mean, even some of our metros are not as planned as them. So these are some of the key points of this period. So you see that, streets are well-oriented. Houses were built with the bricks which are burnt. And we see a lot of two-floor built houses, etc. It also says that there were a lot of complex structures. It was not simple mud structures. It was not simple a few houses as such. But the city itself was well developed there. Same, the Harappan techniques continued, and even today. And this is the most interesting thing. In 21st century India, when we go to the villages, not just villages, when we go across different places of India, we see that some of these techniques are still preserved, and it is still being continued. For example, let us say this whole idea of a central courtyard and rooms being, or the rooms being arranged around it, it dates all the way back to 2500 BC. So that is about some of these continuations that we see. And another interesting thing here is, in 2500 BCE, we get the first evidence for a Vedic architecture, what we call as the architecture of the Veda. And that is this whole concept of Upa. I'm sure that many of us might be knowing what Upa is. So we see the mentions of Upa in Ramayana, Mahabharata, and many other texts. So Upa is basically part of the Vedic architecture, where if you're doing a yajna, you also need to do sacrifice along with. Right, so the animal that is being sacrificed will be tied to the Upa Sthampa. That is what is called. So the Upa Sthampa, it is an octagonal pillar, and it involves a lot of complex architecture as well. So a rope will be tied on the top, and a noose will be put, and the noose will go around the animal, the sacrificial animal head. And we see that in Harappa, and this place called the Binjor, and this dates back to 2500 BCE. Okay, so that is about Saraswati Sindhu civilization. The second is about the Kailasa temple, right? I'm sure that many of you would have identified very easily. Do you believe that that was one big mountain that was carved out into this particular shape? So the architects, whoever was behind it, they would have started from the top of the mountain. And then they used their tools. One by one, they picked stones, and they came all the way. And this is the end result. And all of this they did in 18 years. Now, many experts say that if we have to do the same with the latest modern technology that we have right now, we would at least take 50 years. So they did that in 18 years. And of course, later additions had come to this place, but the point is that the main structure, right, whatever was essential for Kailasa temple, that was done in 18 years. And another interesting fact about this is that, so where did all the cut-out rocks go? Where did the debris go? They are not to be seen anywhere closer to this place. So they really use some high-grade technology about which we are not aware of. I was talking about this to one of my friends who happens to know a lot about architecture. So this particular person was telling me they would have melted the rocks. I really don't understand how that is done, technology behind it. But the point is that there are speculations like that as well. And by the way, this is built by the Rashtrakuta king, Krishna I, and that is around 8th century CE. And this is the climax of rock. It is called the climax of the rock cut phase of Indian architecture. Okay. How many of you could actually guess this place? This is from a later period. I mean, it happened in 17th century. So this is Raigad Fort. And what is Raigad Fort famous for? It is a place where Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj had his coronation, right, in 1674. And it was the capital of the Maratha Empire. It was in many ways, it is a place from which the whole nationalist renaissance started in many ways. It is in the Sahyadri ranges. 820, the fort is 820 meters tall, above sea level, and 1737 steps leading to the fort, all of that. Two things really great about this Raigad Fort. So first thing, they had a great acoustic arrangement in the fort. So that would mean, this is the darbar of, let us say, this is the darbar of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, and I am Chhatrapati Shivaji sitting here. And then what would happen is that, let us say at the far end of the darbar, there is an entrance, and somebody even whispers from there, I can actually hear it. And this travels a long distance. And it is simply because of the construction by which it was done. So that is the first speciality, the great acoustic arrangement that was done there. The second is about, so they had markets within the fort. And markets were arranged in such a way that, let us say this is a road, this is a street, and on both sides we have elevated platforms. And the markets will be located on these elevated platforms so that if I am on horse, I don't have to get down to get something, rather I can transact from the horseback. So, I mean, again, this is another interesting way of how they arrange the markets, right? It's all about organizing. I'm not telling that this was not present elsewhere. That is not the point. But the point here, I'm just taking this as an example for 17th century Indian architecture. Right. So, why did we say all this? Now, all the three. The first example of Saraswati Sindhu civilization, the second one of Kailasa temple, and the third Raigad fort. The first dates back to 2500 BCE. The second one, the 8th century, and the third one, 17th century. So we are talking about almost 2000 years long, right? And so they are separated in time, in such a long time. Also, one is from Harappa, which is, not in India these days. Then we have Kailasa temple, which is from, again, Maharashtra. We also have Raigad, again from Maharashtra. So the point here we are trying to say is that over long periods of time, and we kept on building huge monuments, which are one or the other way, they continue to make us very proud. And these are just 3 examples. You can talk about hundreds of examples that is alive all over us, all around us. So the point is, whether accident, like, there were some great architects at some point of time and suddenly they built something and then they left it there. No, there was a continuing tradition, and this was an intellectual tradition. So that is when we ask, so what is the intellectual capital behind it? Did they have any codified system where they propagated this particular thing? Or were they just building out of their own inspiration? Because many commentaries we read, even let us say when we study in school, in many commentaries the whole narrative would end up like, there were accidents. Not exactly accidents, but there were great periods, and they were all looked at in a disconnected fashion. So here we would like to say, or we would like to look at it more as a products of a specialized body of knowledge. And that particular body of knowledge is called the Vastu Shastra. So this is where we connect all of this to the intellectual capital, the intellectual tradition here. This Vastu Shastra, we'll come to more about it. It's a body of knowledge, as valid as any other body of knowledge. And it is continuously researched and propagated, and this happened through many generations over centuries. Of course, during various times of invasion, it suffered setbacks. It suffered setbacks in the sense we were not able to do as well as we could have been. But then the point is it always revived. It never died out. That knowledge is not lost. We might have lost certain skills. We might have lost certain specific aspects about Vastu Shastra. But then more or less the larger body is still intact. And the best part is we are still influenced by its philosophy, its principles, its designs, traditions, and rituals. See, we may not understand this, we may not know this. When we are building our house, we might not be building it exactly as per what Vastu Shastra say. But unconsciously, we are very much influenced by the various aspects of Vastu Shastra. We'll come to that. By the way, can you identify this particular building? I'm sure that people here can do it. Our online friends might not be knowing it, so I will explain. This is exactly where the place I am standing right now. And this is Shankaram block of Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeeth. Look at the beautiful structure it has. It is a modern place by all means, but then it has a very traditional look, which is inspired by the designs from Vastu Shastra. So let me thank the architect who has made this possible. Okay, now let us map it to the intellectual tradition. So what you see on the top, the four, of course those are the Veda, the 4 volumes of the Veda. We call the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. What comes down is Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda, Sthapatyaveda, Artha Shastra. All of them are called the Upa-Veda. Those of you who are following OLA talks continuously, you might have heard about all these lectures. By the way, those of you who are joining fresh today, then please note that in our YouTube channel, we have talks about all these. This is basically the Vedic corpus that we are talking about. And this is basically the IKS, Indian knowledge systems, that we are talking about. So we have Upa-Vedas from Veda. And in Atharva Veda, we have an Upa-Veda called Sthapatyaveda. If you see, there are 2 names mentioned here, Sthapatyaveda and Artha Shastra. So different commentators have different opinions on this. There is a school of thought which says Artha Shastra is the Upa-Veda of Atharva Veda, whereas the other school of thought says, no, it is the Sthapatyaveda. And now Sthapatyaveda, what does it consist of? This is where Vastu Shastra come. And then it includes various other things as well, various other knowledge bases as well. Like for example, Shilpa Shastra. I'm sure that most of us would have heard about the 64 Kalas. Kala in the sense art. So there were 64 specialized arts. They still are there. But maybe they are not propagated the way it is usually or earlier. This is also part of the Sthapatyaveda. And by the way, in the 64 Kalas, one of the Kala is Vastu Vidya. However, we have a Upa-Veda, however, we have Vastu Shastra separately as well. Now here, in Vastu Shastra, we are basically talking about, in this particular lecture, we are basically talking about 8 texts and the ideas inspired from those principal 8 primary architectural texts. However, we also have 7 other texts which are not based on architecture, which are not exactly based on Vastu, however contains chapters which are very important for Vastu literature. So where did it all start from? What is the heritage? Who are the people behind it? What does the Purana say about the originators of this particular Shastra? So we have identified 18 primary contributors to Vastu Shastra. Not only contributors, in many ways they are originators as well. So they are Bhrigu, Atri, Vasishta, Vishwakarma, Maya, Narada, Nagnajit, Vishalaksha, Purandara, Brahma, Kumara, Nandisha, Shaunaka, Garga, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Shukra, Brihaspati. Now, we would have heard their names 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 1,000,000 times if we have gone through our Puranic literature. These names keep happening, keeps coming across in a lot of stories. Like, for example, who is the person or who is the architect of Indraprastha, the city of Indraprastha, which we see in Mahabharata? It is Maya. So, it is Nirmida. And we call Maya Asura. He was an Asura by clan, and he's a great architect who crafted the entire city. We would have also come across Lanka, Ravana's Lanka. And the architect behind it is Vishwakarma. So basically, before Ravana, it was owned by Kubera. I think it was built during those times. So these are the principal original contributors of Vastu Shastra. And a lot of famous cities and monuments were built during their times. Of course, they are not part of our history because this period is called the prehistory, right? I mean, we call it the Pauranic period. And of course, it is not included in the historical period that we talk about. So these are some of the important cities of those times. Ayodhya, Mathura, Kashi. There is even a sloka, right? Ayodhya, Mathura, Kashi, Kanchi, Puri, Avantika. Then it goes Dwaraka, Indraprastha, Ramasetu. Ramasetu is another monument which happened during this time. Right. So these are the 8 principal texts of Vastu Shastra. The first is the Vishwakarma Prakasha, written by Vishwakarma, who is the one who created the beautiful city of Lanka. Then Mayamatam by Maya. So roughly it is put across as 5th century CE. Narada Shilpa Shastra by Narada. Kashyapa Shilpam Manasara. Manushyalaya Chandrika. This is from 16th century, which is very, not very far, right? 16th century is what, 500 years back? Right. So it was actually, this book is actually composed by a person called Tirumangalattu Neelakantan Moosat. So I believe he is from Kerala. And this is an original work of his. However, he has acknowledged that the ideas are from various previous texts. So this contains basically 7 chapters. And these are some of the contents. I think this will be very interesting. So first is it talks about investigation and selection of land. Then how do you do site analysis? House and parts of house. That's the 3rd chapter. 4th is about elements of roof. And then it continues. What are the other ancillary structures that we use? So that is a very recent text that way. Then Brihad Vastumala by Varahamihira, Samarangana Sutradhara. So it goes, right? And there are other major texts like Brihad Samhita, Arthashastra, Vimana Sthana, Agni Purana, Matsya Purana. All of this contain chapters from chapters on Vastu and architecture. Right. So Vastu, basically it comes from the root word Vasa, which means to dwell, to live. On one side, we talk about the intellectual capital, all the intellectual aspect of it. However, all our Puranas or Itihasas, the entire Vedic literature, or let us say the entire Hindu literature, let us say in that way, is very inspired by stories and legends. So this is one of such stories. It comes from Matsya Purana. So it is said that, there was a time, a long back, many long years back, there used to be an Asura called Andhaka. And this Andhaka had a very bad habit, let us say. He went on harassing the sages and seers. So he went around, he would do all kinds of, bad things to them. And finally, the sages found that this is getting worse and they can't live with him. So they went and requested to Bhagavan Shiva to do something about it. So Shiva comes and fights with him, and this fight goes on for many long years. And at some point, Shiva also gets a little tired. And as a result, what happens, a drop of sweat falls from his body. And from this drop of sweat, and by the way, he goes on to finish Andhaga and help the rishis. But the point is, a drop of sweat dropped from his body. And from that drop of sweat came a big asura, a big monster. Not an asura exactly, he was an extreme monster. And this person, he's hungry. He wants to eat everything that comes his way. So he keeps on eating. And at one point, what happens? All the devas come to... And by the way, he goes on eating almost everything in earth. He also starts destroying nature. Then his next aim is Devaloka. So the gods got really worried about it, and they all came together and made a plan. And the plan was to encircle him from all the sides and pin him down on the ground. Right? And they did that. And as they did that, this person was crying for mercy, and he said, please let me go. And the devas, on one condition, let him go. And that one condition was, they said, on earth, if there is any plot of land that has a compound wall on all 4 directions, then you can occupy that place. And you also have the liberty to completely own that place. And if the person occupying that place doesn't pay respect to you, gives trouble to you, then you also can basically trouble him. Not exactly trouble him. You can punish him for that. You can punish that person for that. However, if that person is being nice to you, treating you well, then what you would do is you will bless him with all the prosperity. And this person, this monster, now let us say he's a transformed person right now. No? So this transformed person is called Vastu Purusha. And this is how he look. At least this is how he look in our iconography. So this is the story of Vastu. The point I'm trying to say here is, it also has a parallel legend to it. And this is one of those legends. Okay, so now let us move into the types of Vastu. What are the different types of Vastu we talk about? We have basically 3 types of Vastu here. The first is called the Avasiya Vastu, which is a residential building. Then comes Vyavasayika, which are the industrial buildings. Then Dharmika Vastu, the religious and educational. On the left, what you see are the main 5 types of Avasiya Vastu. So one is the Trinajam. Trinajam, we all know, Trina is grass. So the house that are built of grass. Then the wood, that which is made of wood. Then you see Mrinmayam, where it is made of mud. Shailam of stone, and Ishtikam is basically the bricks. So these are the 5 types of Avasiya Vastu which are major. And again, we see that all this today, right? Till this day, we see all the 5. So let us look at what are the Dharmika Vastu. What are the different styles of Dharmika Vastu we have in our country. I'm sure that this is also covered in our school days. We would have, I think we had a chapter on this, or maybe a little more than a chapter. So in Dharmika Vastu, we have 3 prominent temple designs. They are called the Dravida design, the Nagara design, and Vesara design. Okay, so can you see this particular, the extreme left picture of a temple? Can anyone guess which temple that is? The clue is that it is from Tanjavur. I mean, of course, Malayalis and Tamils would know it very well. Others might. Yeah, so that is from Tanjavur, and it is Brihadeshwara temple. One of the heritage sites built by Rajaraja Chola. It still continues to make us really proud. On the next is Kandariya Mahadeva temple, and the last is Chennakeshava temple. That is from Karnataka. So these are examples of all the 3 styles. We'll come to that. But before that, let us see on what basis are we categorizing these 3 or classifying these 3 temple designs. Let us say Nagara is the first style. Now, Nagara is considered to be a Satvika. Nagara style is considered to be constructed for a place which is Satvika. And here what we mean by Satvika is the region that lies between Himalayas and the Vindhya. So all the way from Himalayas till Vindhyas, that entire region is categorized Satvika here. And Nagara style is predominantly followed here. Then from Vindhya to Tungabhadra, the Vindhyas all the way to Tungabhadra, we follow the Dravida pattern. And from Tungabhadra to Rameshwaram, it is Vesara. And these are the principal texts which suggest these models. So for Nagara, it is Kashyapa Samhita. For Dravida, Bhrigu Samhita, and then Mayamatam. And based on this, we have temples built. Okay, there is name here, so I don't have to ask you which temple is this. Again, if you have not visited this temple, please do. This is one of my favorite temples. So this is Arunachaleshwara temple from Tiruvannamalai, where we have the Arunagiri there. We also have Ramanashramam there, and this temple is very close to that. So it is a temple from the Chola period, and is a very good example of Dravida architecture. So generally speaking about Dravida style, it is developed dynastically, which means it was promoted by dynasties. It got promoted through dynasties, and to start with Chola here. Right. However, this temple was even, extended during 16th century. I think Nayakas continued building on it. Some of the Gopurams were built by the later Nayakas in 16th century. Then the Vimana, right? What is Vimana? Vimana is on a temple you see the pyramid-like structure, right? The towers basically. Now, if you see the Brihadeshwara temple, now you can clearly see the Vimana there. However, on the next slide, when you see, now this is a Gopuram. In a Dravida architecture, what we see is that within the larger temple complex, there are many sub-shrines within the temple. If you go to Arunachaleshwara temple, you have various other deities all across within the temple. They don't have separate, of course they have separate shrines, but they don't have separate, the other architecture. And of course they will have Gopuram, and then it is always in a compound. It is always compound. It comes within the boundaries always. Nagara example, again I have mentioned it here. It is Kandariya Mahadeva temple, Khajuraho. It's really beautiful, right? When we said Dravida temple are dynastically developed, here it is more from a regional point of view. These styles got developed from regions. This is Shikara. So what you see is the curvilinear tower here. It is built directly above the Garbhagriha, which is the Shri Kovil. We say Shri Kovil in our place. And then you can have such multiple Shikaras. Here, interesting thing, you will not see Gopuras here. Now, the entire Orissa is well known for these kinds of temples, right? Including the Konark temple. Then it also doesn't have a compound wall. So this is another second style. Vesara style, which is basically a hybrid of both styles. So it is Dravida plus Nagara. Also, some aspects of both are missing as well. So confluence of Nagara and Dravida, it developed mainly during the 17th century, and Karnataka is the center for this. The Chalukyas, the great Chalukyas were the principal people behind this. Here you can see miniature Vimanas. Those are not complete ones like we saw in the Dravida style. So we have multiple shrines side by side. Gopuram may be present, may not be present. You can't say that there are no Gopurams at all, but then it is may or may not kind of. Again, same with the compound walls. So these are the principal 3 styles of architecture. And even when we say Nagara architecture, there are various subdivisions or there are sub-variations within that style as well. So here we are only talking about the larger framework. What temple is this? This is a proposed model of some temple. Can you say this? Hey, you have to say this. Yeah, Ram temple, the proposed model for Ram temple in Ayodhya. So what design is it? Based on whatever we discussed so far, what design is it? It would basically be the Nagara style. No, we just have to think where it is placed, right? It is in Uttar Pradesh, Ayodhya is in Uttar Pradesh, and that area is known for the Nagara architecture. And no, even otherwise, if you see the temple structure itself, it's very clear. And by the way, just a trivia on that, the Somapura family is actually doing this particular architecture. I mean, they are doing the architecture for this particular temple. Right, and the Bhumi Puja has already completed, right? August 5 it was. Right. Yeah, so we were talking about types of Vastu. We said that there is residential Vastu, which is Avasiya Vastu. Then we talked about the Dharmika Vastu, which are basically temples. Not just temples, even educational institutions come under Dharmika Vastu. So, for example, let us say the construction of Nalanda, which used to be a university of the earlier period, that would also be called a Dharmika Vastu by definition. Now, let us come to the third aspect of Vastu, which is city planning. What you see here is a plan of a fortified city, and this is straight out of Artha Shastra of Chanakya, Kautilya, right? So we can just see how it was placed. So you have the royal residence right in the middle, and then we know those were the times when Varna Vyavastha was strictly followed. So the Brahmins used to live at this place. Similarly, Kshatriyas, Shudras and Vaishyas are here. Now just see, restaurants have a place here at the back gate, let us say. So bars, courtesans. Similarly, see the guilds, they occupied this far end of the city. So this is a fortified city, so within the fort we see all of this. If you remember this movie, Bahubali, right? In Bahubali you have the Mahishmati, the city of Mahishmati. I'm not sure if it was built on this basis, but the point is, it gives you a sense of what it used to be. It gives you a sense of what a fortified city would actually look like. So that was an example. Okay, so based on this, there are various designs of planning. So what I have mentioned here is some of the designs of street planning, right? What kinds of streets we used to have during those times, or what are the main principal 8 designs that were suggested for streets. So the first one, we can just go through it. The first is called a Dandaka. In the Dandaka model, the streets are straight and cross each other at right angles. Basically, you know, they are very simple and straight. If you guys have come to, if you have been to Pondicherry, there is this place called the White Town, you know, the French construction part. Now, those streets would pretty much look like what Dandaka says. And interestingly, what I found is that when I was reading through this, it says this particular street model is preferable for those where the intellectuals living, where intellectuals are living. These are the places where these models are perfectly suited. Similarly, we have Nandyavarta. We'll come to that. We will see a Nandyavarta model in the next slide. Sarvatobhadra, Patmaga. Patmaga basically is about the lotus shape, right? So the entire city and streets would be designed in a lotus shape way. So they have specifications as well. It needs to have 4 to 8 streets lined with houses. Let us say if you're planning for 200 to 300 kinds of houses, then Dandaka model is preferred. So similarly, you know, it depends on what are your requirements. Based on that, the street models are being defined. So similarly, we have Prastara, Karmuka, Chaturmukha, etc., etc. So these are the 8 models. This is an example of Nandyavarta, the model we discussed about. And this is Meenakshi temple from Madurai, Madurai Meenakshi. The capital of Pandyas, right? Used to be the capital of Pandyas. So this would be what Nandyavarta model will look like. Temple is at the center. Madurai Meenakshi temple is at the center, and all across it you have various structures built in. And look at the way the street is running. Now it is a little disaligned. I mean, not really. Alignment might not have been perfect right now because of later constructions. What happened in last 200 years, but then. The larger body is still intact. Again from Tamil Nadu, Srirangam. Again, this is another temple I would request all of you to visit. Srirangam is the largest living temple complex in the world. Now we have Angkor Wat, which is really big, huge, temple complex. But then Nitya Puja is not being done there, right? So this is the largest living temple complex in the entire world, and this is how it looks from a elevated point of view. So what you see in the middle is a temple here. Okay, so we discussed about types of Vastu. Then we saw some of the street views as well. Those are some of the designs of Vastu. So when we are talking about Vastu, it basically has these 8 principal components in there. And understanding Vastu through these 8 elements are really important. So the first aspect, right, the first limb of Vastu is Yajamana. And what is Yajamana? I think we are familiar with this word, right? Yajamana here means the owner, the person who is going to reside there as well. So owner plus the person who takes residence there. Now, an interesting aspect about Vastu is, see, we all know that Vastu is not just about various designs and various methods of doing this. It also has certain philosophies behind it. It also comes from a certain understanding about the world, certain beliefs and assumptions about the world, all of that. So one of the things it mentioned is that if you want to construct anything, now you will have to consider the following 5 aspects of Yajamana. Now what are the 5 aspects? You will have to consider his name, his horoscope, his varna, his profession, and anthropometrics. So anthropometrics, we mean the comparative study of measurements and capabilities of human bodies. So basically the comparative study of human body to the structure itself. And these are the 5 aspects which are considered of the Yajamana who is going to start the building project. Now this is very interesting, I find. The second aspect is Shilpi. So when we say Shilpi here, mostly these days when we say Shilpi, we only mean the architect. But here by Shilpi, what we mean is the entire engineering team. Again, let us say these are the 5, we are talking about a few people here, and these are the people who will be primarily responsible for the construction to come out well. So we already see Yajaman, who is going to fund the whole project, and it is for him the project is being done. And who are the other people? You need an architect, right? You need a chief architect, the person who is leading from the front. And that person is called Sthapati. So we have a Sthapati who is a chief architect. Then we have a civil engineer who is called Sutragrahi. So we have Sthapati, we have Sutragrahi, then Vardhaki. Vardhaki is a land developer. Then Takshaka, and Takshaka is carpenter. Then we have Karmi. Karmi are the laborers, the people who, At the end of the day, they are the ones who put all the bricks together and put mortar on it. So these are the people who are involved with, or these are the people who are involved in the team, the Shilpi, the engineering team. So how it is done? It is done in this way. So it would mean that it is a Yajamana who will select who should the Sthapati be. The owner selects the chief architect. And what are the criteria for selecting a Sthapati? Then it is his knowledge base, of course, his skill sets, his experience, and his past and present history, and also if he is affordable to me, what is the fees that he is going to charge. So these are the 5 things you have to consider before hiring a Sthapati, which is the chief architect. Then the next stage is either Yajaman goes on hiring the Sutragrahi. Sutragrahi is the civil engineer, or Sthapati can designate a Sutragrahi. Otherwise, Yajaman plus Sthapati, both of them have to sit together and decide on the Sutragrahi. That is the civil engineer. Then Sutragrahi can decide on Vardhaki, who is a land developer. Right? And Sutragrahi plus land developer, that is Vardhaki, together decide on the Takshaga, the carpenter. And finally, again, Vardhaki comes back and he also selects who are the people whom he wants in his team as Karmi, the laborers. So this process has to be followed by the engineering team. Third aspect is about Bhumi. Bhumi is the land where you're going to build the whole structure. We already saw that land is classified as Satvika, Rajasika and Tamasika, and from Himalayas to Vindhyas is Satvika, from Tungabhadra, right? Vindhyas to Tungabhadra is Rajasika, and then we see from Rameshwaram to Tungabhadra to Rameshwaram is Tamasika. So that is one categorization of Bhumi. There is another categorization as well, which is called the Purna, Supadma, Bhadra and Dhumra. So Purna means an area which has less water and it is a hilly region basically. Supadma, we have a lot of water, there is ample water available and the land is also plain. Now this is considered to be Uttamam, this is considered the perfect place for a construction. Then you have Bhadra land, which basically means it is near seashore and it is a very rich land. And Dhumra is a place which is uneven and hard. And it is advisable not to build any construction there because it is not going to last that much. How do you select Bhumi? So you have a various tests. You do various kinds of examination. One of the examination is looking at by color. What is the color of the soil that is present there? Then you smell it, taste it, you tap on it and see what sound comes from it, and also you check the temperature of that particular land. There is a beautiful movie called Perindachan. It is a Malayalam movie. It is from 1990, I guess. I don't remember who is the director. And it is acted, it is Thilagan, the great Malayalam actor Thilagan, played the role of Perindachan. So Perindachan used to be a great architect of yesteryears of, I think his time period was 17th century maybe. I'm not sure about the time period he lived. But then you can read a lot about him in Aidihya. So we have this folklore, collection of folklore in Malayalam by Kottarathil Shangunni. There you find a lot of mention about Perindachan. So why I mentioned here is that in this particular film, Perindachan, if you see it, there are certain scenes where, so let us say somebody asks him, is this place good for construction, something like that. So what he does is he takes a piece of, a fistful of soil, and then he just puts it in his mouth, chews it a few times and says, no, this place is not good. So what he says is that, a war has happened here. That is what he says. So this place, a war has happened in this place. We don't know when, right? It could be centuries before, but this person could sense it. And he says, this place is not fit for it. Now, how would he have come to that conclusion? It is said that the taste of the soil, so he would have tasted blood in the soil. Now, we really don't know how these things are done these days, or how it happened those days, but there are mentions of such stories from our past. So when it says that, examination is based on taste as well, they used to do that. Right, so they say visual and oral examination were part of selecting the right place. Then comes the fourth limb, which is called the Vastoshpati, which are basically rituals. The interesting thing is that most of these rituals, we mainly talk about 5 rituals here, most of it we follow even to this day. We all do Bhumi Puja, right? Before we start any project, we do Bhumi Puja, which is we worship the land. Bhumi is our mother. Then we start with, the next thing is Griharamba, and that is a stone laying ceremony, and that is what happened on August 5th at, Honorable Prime Minister did at Ayodhya. Then we have Griha Pravesha, which is housewarming ceremony. Then Vastu Shanti, which many of us might not be doing, which is seeking blessings from the Vastu Purusha. And then Vastu Pujana, which is, continue as we continue to do rituals to appease Vastu, the Vastu Purusha. We talked about the, the ghastly monster who went on eating everything, right? So he's still lying there on the ground. So we have to occasionally please him as well. Coming to Pada Vinyasa, it is design. I was talking to Gauriji yesterday about this, and she actually mentioned to me, in this particular temple, which is in Bhojpur, so it is called Bhojeshwara temple, it's a Shiva temple, built by the Paramara dynasty. There is a stone on which the entire blueprint of this particular temple is carved. Now, I tried to find out that picture from Google, however, I could not get it. So the point is, before the temple is being built, the entire blueprint, just like how we do it today, it was carved out on a stone. And that is what Pada Vinyasa, the design, is all about. Then comes Vastu, materials. We talk about mud, brick, limestone, all of this as primary materials. Interestingly, diamond and ruby were also used. Diamonds and ruby were also used. So let us say in a huge temples where Garbhagriha is so beautifully decorated, you can actually paste these valuable stones over there. It is also mentioned as one of the materials for building certain kinds of constructions. Palaces, right? All of that, we see that. Now, where are the stones sourced from? So stones are mainly sourced from the hills, also from underground mines. So they had facilities for underground mining and getting the desired, required kind of stones as well. Again, the stones now they used to classify stones as male, female, and neutral. Right? All the three genders were used to decide what type the stone is. So again, coming back to this particular film, Perundachan. So what they used to do was the Tachan is an architect, right? The architect will tap on the stone in a certain way. And the kind of sound it produces tells you it is a male stone, it is a female stone, or it is a neutral stone. So male stones, you will use it for roofing and also the walls, the side walls. If it is a female stone, then you use it on the, below for the plinth. You construct plinth out of it. And then the neutral stone, those are used for foundation. So this is how they used to classify stones. Also, very interestingly, I found that in one of the text commentaries, there is a detailed mention of how this architecture adamantine, the glue, the kind of glue that they use, how it is being made. And it's a very elaborate, very specific mention of how it is being done. Okay, I'll just quickly go through two more points. So now we have Sthapatyam. It is the art and practice of engineering. So these are the four things that they used to do in Sthapatyam. So first, you have to budget the whole project, and you have to optimize what are the kind of resources you're going to use. Then structuring. How do you structure the entire thing? Interestingly, if you're building a residential house, they used to build it in such a way that it should last 200 years. So in their mind, they are building a house for 200 years. Right now we are here in CVV campus, and we have SIF very near to us, and it is the birth home of Adi Shankaracharya, his maternal ancestral home, basically the home of Aryamba. Now this particular structure, you can imagine how old it is. We are talking about Shankaracharya, right? Of course, his date, his date of birth is debated, but still you can safely say it is so long. Of course, it is renovated throughout history. It is not that that structure still stands the same. Look at the imagination. They are building something that in a way that it should last for a long time. Another important aspect about this is Sthapatyam is that the entire construction should be nature friendly. And what do we mean by nature friendly? Of course, the materials used are nature friendly. But beyond that, it should also blend well with the nature. It should not, stand out. It should not jut out of, the entire landscape. So this aspect is very well taken care of. And then the last is analyzing problems. So it is said that a person who is an expert in Vastu should be well versed in all the following, and which are, he should be the measurement of time. His measurement of time should be perfect. Space, measurement of area, measurement of mass, motion, knowledge of instruments, estimation, direction, etc., and also management. So that is about Sthapatyam. And then we come to Alankaram, which is renovation. So Alankaram is basically about repairs and modification, which happens continuously. And it is also about interior and exterior designs. Some of the examples we have here is how do we decorate our doors. If if we look any structure of ours, it is not just about a huge structure that is being built, but how finely it is done. Look at any structure that we have around us. I mean, I'm talking about the ancient structures. It is intricately carved, very well designed, very beautifully modeled. And that all comes from this Alankaram aspect. So it is not just about how huge it is, but how fine it is. So that is the Alankaram aspect of it. So these are the 8 limbs of Vastu. Is Vastu one of the other styles of architecture? Like, you have so many styles of architecture across the world. So is this one of the other, just like that? That is where we say, it is a whole lifestyle in itself. It has a whole, philosophy behind it. It has a whole worldview behind it. Now, why do we do Vastu? Is it just about designs? No. We all know that the entire Vedic literature is about the purpose of human life is considered fourfold, which is called the Chaturvida Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. So a person is considered successful, a person is considered fulfilled, let us say, only when all the 4 are complete. Now, Vastu is contributing to the first 3 Purushartha, which is Dharma, Artha and Kama. Dharma, Artha and Kama. So it says, Vastu is basically trying to play between 3 variables. The first is, it is aligning the Panchabhuta. So we have 5 elements, right? So the 5 elements of the world. So the first is Panchabhuta, then the Earth's magnetic field, and then the rotational influence of Sun, Moon, and other planets. So these are the 3 variables, and Vastu is trying to play with it and bring out the correct sequence so that the person living there, he is physically, well, and also his emotional. It also affects him emotionally. Now, some of us might have questions about how does planets influence us. Now, that's a different debate altogether. We'll not go there. But this is coming from that particular perspective. Now, it believes that for every place, there's a character, right? So if it is a dining room, the dining room has a certain character. And going according to the flow of going according to the character of the place, that is what we mean by ritual purity. So if we have to live according to the ritual purity, then Vastu helps us in doing that. And we all know that ritual purity is very important in the Vedic scheme of life. However, that doesn't mean that it is very stuck. It is very ancient and it cannot be applied right now. It also evolves with traditions and needs. I'll just end with 2 quotations. One is from Mahaperiyava, Shri Kanchi Swami, Chandrasekhara Saraswati Swamigal, who was the 68th Shankaracharya of Kanchi Petam. So he says, the term Grihastha itself is from Griha, and Griha is house, right? Those who follow ritual purity in matters like eating, living, clothing, must build their houses according to our architectural concepts. Then Vishwakarma says, even if one can't apply the Sthapatyaveda knowledge fully, it is still more beneficial to apply some of this to improve our life and growth. So Vishwakarma says that. This reminds me of this shloka from Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter. I think it is the 42nd shloka where it says, Swalpam abhyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So even if you practice a little of dharma, that will save you from the greatest of fears, or that will let you conquer the greatest of fears. That's what Krishna says in Gita. Vishwakarma is also saying something similar. So he says, now you might not be able to follow it 100%, but follow a little at least, still it will serve you well. I don't speak with authority here because, of course, I'm just learning these aspects right now. But what I understand is it is basically about the land formation. For example, when we say tamasic land, what we actually mean is, the land where a lot of geological movements is happening. So, a lot of geological activity is happening, and that might not lead to a stable standing for a long time. So that is considered tamasic for sure. Whereas in the, the Gangetic plains, basically Himalayas to Vindhyas, when we call Sattvic, the availability of water and the congenial environment for structures to last is there. So I think that is the way in which it is called Sattvic, similar for Rajasic also. So this is my understanding as of now.
Yeah, and battlefield or the Smashana Bhumi, etc., something near that is always, like Tyajya. We should not have any constructions near or on such lands.
Right.
And you mentioned about Bhojpur, and I had visited that, I told you.
Yeah.
And that temple is not complete. It was left incomplete by Paramara King. But then the ramp is still there, prevalent. And on a great slab of stone, there is a carving done, and that is the blueprint. And interestingly, one of our participants, Anand P., says that he has photographs of that, and I have in the chat box, I have given him my mail. So I'll be waiting for those. Once I get it, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you, Anand.
Thank you, Gauriji. Thank you, Anand.
Yeah.
Right.
There are few comments here. Based on the color of soil, sometimes, it is Satvika, Rajasa, Tamasa. That is by Ruchita.
It would not be right on my part to comment on that as a final aspect, but it is for sure that a lot of these are influenced from these three styles. And by the way, the entire Southeast Asia, for that matter, it was under the influence of the Cholas, right? So it is the Chola kings of Tamil Nadu who went all the way and built. I'm not specifically talking about Angkor Wat. Even if it is not built by a Cholas, then the later period, when it was built later period, they had the influence of Cholas there. So I would like to believe that, or rather I would say that they definitely have assimilated a lot from this.
We have a comment that it was based on Sthapatyaveda. The basis is Sthapatyaveda, because basically, as you said rightly, it is the Cholas who went from here and built it. So they have carried their strategies with them.
True.
Yeah, that's very right. I would like to mention here, if there are no more questions, about something about the Atharva Veda. I think when I spoke on Atharva Veda, perhaps I referred to this. There is a Shala Nirmana Sukta in Atharva Veda, in the third Kanda. And it starts with Ihaiva niminomi tvam shala dhruvam shalam vinimomi. Like, I am going to build here a shala which will stay here for years together, for hundreds and millions of years together. And that is the basic thing. And how this shala should be, she is trinam vasana, as if she's attired in grass or thatch or straw, because it's a grassy roof basically. Then it should be ghritamukhamana. It should be sprinkling with ghee. That means there should be plenty of cattle in the near the household, so that there should be plenty of milk, buttermilk, etc., etc. And agamed kumaraha, ayuvanaha, and syandamanaha gavaha. Let there come the kumaras, the young people, as well as the milk cows. So that is the concept of Vastu for us. So it is Shanno Dvipade, Sham Chatushpade. That is our entire system, right? Our ethos tells us that we pray not only for the human beings who reside in the house, but even the quadrupeds, the birds and animals, the pets, etc. So this Vastushpati, therefore, right from the Rigveda, we have this deity called Vastushpati. Like you rightly stated, Srinath, the figure of Vastu, So he is the Vastushpati, he resides in the Vastu. And another very important epithet of the Shala given in Atharva Veda is Sundratavati. Sundratavati, you must speak good words in that. If you spell, articulate any bad words, the Vastu Purusha is there who is saying Tathastu, Tathastu, Tathastu. So always think good, speak good, and do good unto others. So that is the greater value. It's not just a brick and mortar construction.
Yeah.
There is a greater value to that, and that has, that Indianness into it. And this is, I think, very important for all of us to understand. So I think we'll close it, because we want everybody to stay safe wherever they are. We'll close with Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah.
Sure.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ